Hello and welcome to Palace Intrigue. I am your host with allergies and all, Mark Francis. Meghan Markle says difficult is a code word for bitch on the latest episode of her Archetypes podcast. Meghan said, what these people are implying when they use that very charged word is that this woman, she's difficult, which is really just a euphemism, or is probably not even a euphemism. It really is a code word for the B word. My friends said to me there's a certain point when you come to terms with the fact that not everyone is going to like you. The goal can't be for everyone to like you, but the goal can be for them to respect you. The Daily Mail points out Meghan says friends are reclaiming and embracing the B word, but she herself refuses to say it on the podcast, calling it the B word throughout or spelling it out for listeners. She says she would never use it unless it is to refer to a female dog. I remember when I was a kid and people would say sticks and stones may break your bones, but names will never hurt you. Well, that was just a flat-out lie. Of course, names hurt. But what happens when we use that pain to fuel purpose? When the B word is shouted with one intent, but you're able to let it go and to remind yourself of all the other words with B that better describe you. Beautiful, blessed, brilliant, beguiling, blissful, bedazzling. Take your pick. In another section of the podcast, Meghan said, so perhaps the truth is that a woman as the B word or as difficult is often a deflection, a way to hide some of her really awesome qualities, her persistence, her strength, her perseverance, her strong opinion, maybe even her resilience, and those are very qualities we are going to be uncovering today. Okay, so calling someone the B word, labeling them as difficult, it's often a way to insult and dismiss someone. I was talking to a good friend of mine this past weekend. And when I saw her, she said something I had never heard before, and she said, well, isn't that a convenient villain, an assertive woman in a position of power, being called the B word? How very convenient. But that's what happens when we label someone, a woman especially, one of these words. It becomes a way to take their power away, keep them in their place. A lot of times it's tied to the very women who have power and agency. I was just chatting with my girlfriends recently, and I was asking them for the show and what sort of archetypes you think we should discuss. And almost immediately, unequivocally, they all jumped to difficult. That's the word you have to talk about, difficult. They said it gets thrown around so casually now, and as a woman, my friend said to me there's a certain point when you come to terms with the fact that not everyone is going to like you. The goal can't be for everyone to like you, but the goal can be for them to respect you. This week's guests are business leaders and entrepreneurs, including Melody Hobson, the chairwoman of Starbucks, who was the first black woman to be a chairperson of S&P 500 company. She is married to Star Wars creator George Lucas and guest Victoria Jackson, the makeup mogul and friend of Meghan. The Mail adds that Miss Jackson is part of the Sussex's close-knit group of friends in Montecito, and describing being raped and stabbed by the notorious pillowcase rapist in the 1970s. She went on to build a $1 billion business and then moved into medical research after her own child suffered a rare and often fatal eye condition. The Mail recaps a curious opening to the podcast. At the start of the conversation with Hobson, Meghan said, "Oh, it's so nice to see you. Before we jump in, how was summer?" The podcast was edited so listeners do not hear Melody's response. But Meghan says, "I'm so envious. I wish I had just been living La Dolce Vita with you." We also learned that Meghan was a fan of Jeopardy. I would eat my dinner on a TV tray in front of the screen, watching each category with bated breath and intense focus, trying to absorb whatever facts they were firing off in the form of a question. She added that host Alex Trebek was a daily part of her life, even claiming that when he died in November 2020, she received messages of condolences. At this point in the series, I think we've established that I spent a lot of time in front of the TV growing up. I loved movies and shows, I had my favorite programs, and as we continue to unearth with archetypes, many of them can be influenced by pop culture and by the media. Growing up in the 80s and 90s, my generation, we were raised with television the same way that this generation is raised with social media. We didn't have that then. There was no Instagram or TikTok. You couldn't even record shows unless you had a blank VHS tape that you could race to queue up at the exact time. So you hope not to miss your favorite show. For Gen Z listeners, you're going to have to Google or I guess TikTok, whatever I'm talking about. But for those of you who remember those days, you'll also remember the shows that you were always ready for. Now for me, this was Jeopardy. Palace Intrigue will be right back. The Guardian gave the new season of The Crown 2 stars out of 5, saying it's time for this bitty, boring show to end forever. It's cast as cartoonish, the plot is packed with dull speeches, and multiple episodes could have been banned entirely. The royal drama has never been less relevant. An odd-numbered crown season means a cast change, and the new one has landed with embodying the royals as anyone under 50 instinctively pictures them. The Queen, Imelda Staunton, old rather than middle-aged, Charles Dominic West, toddling disaffectedly around with his left hand lodged in his jacket pocket, Philip, Jonathan Price, the vigorous pensioner, flapping naysayers away with outsized hands and ears. The temptation to offer more of a party piece impersonation than a believable character proves hard to resist. Royal historian Tracy Norman, writing for HistoryExtra.com, has a rosier view. On November 24th, 1992, Elizabeth II gave a speech at London's Guildhall, where a reception was held to mark her 40th year on the throne. 1992 is not a year on which I shall look back with undiluted pleasure, she reflected. It has turned out to be an annus horribilis, for a queen renowned for keeping a typically British stiff upper lip, no matter the storms that swirled around her. It offered a rare glimpse into the private distress that she and the royal family had suffered during what was arguably the worst year of her long reign. Just 4 days earlier, a devastating fire ripped through Windsor Castle, one of the Queen's beloved childhood homes, and caused such extensive damage that it would cost £36 million in restoration works. But the damage to the Crown's public standing, wrecked by the collapsed marriages of 3 of the Queen's 4 children during the same year, had been greater still. All the salacious details, from intimate recorded conversations to prying paparazzi photos, had provided endless fodder for the tabloid press. The same scandalous material has supplied a rich stream of storylines for Season 5 of the Netflix drama The Crown. Imelda Staunton has the most challenging role of all. It is no small irony that in the age of mass communication we know fewer of the Queen's personal opinions and feelings than those of her predecessors. Her on-screen dialogue is therefore almost entirely a work of fiction, such as when she reflects being happily married as a preference rather than a requirement. The skill and nuance of Staunton's portrayal in presenting a woman who feels so much more than she is able to convey, even to those closest to her, commands admiration and respect from the viewer, much like the Queen did from the public. As well as assembling what in my view is the strongest, most convincing cast yet, the new season of The Crown delivers everything that viewers have come to expect from this lavish production, from painstakingly researched costumes and period detail to original film footage cleverly adapted to include the actors rather than the real people. And thanks to the year 1992 offering up such a rich source of royal scandals, the storylines are more compelling than ever. And there you have it. If you'd like to email us, our address is thepalaceintrigue@gmail.com. I'm Mark Francis. My thanks to John McDermott. I'll get over these allergies and we'll have another show tomorrow. This is Palace Intrigue, and good times.